Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today is essentially going to be my first sort of preview video of the preseason changes. So essentially what I'm going to be doing in this video is going through the preseason changes on a broad picture overview and kind of giving you a sense for what systemically is going to be changing about the game in the coming preseason patch. If you're looking for specific details, so specific things like items, stats, or champion changes, or anything like that, that is going to have to wait until tomorrow when I do finally go ahead and make that video, or it will be whenever the patch notes do go live, so we'll be able to actually look at the stats from there. But suffice it to say, you won't have those stats right off the bat. I'm just going to be talking about things in a general sense to give you guys a picture of what is going to be changing with League of Legends Preseason 11. Now, these changes are a doozy. These are huge. It is not an overreaction to say that this is potentially the biggest patch to ever be made to League of Legends. This exceeds even the Season 3 item rework, where Riot did something similar to what they're doing right now, and essentially going through the shop, pruning items that are not being built, reworking items to make sure that they have a place, giving certain classes different support. Like, no joke, this is a bigger change than all of those changes, and essentially bigger than a lot of these other changes that are getting made. So this is going to be huge. There will be lots of changes. There will be a lot of weird things happening to the game that you know and love. So just, you're going to have to hold tight. Things will probably be broken on release, but Riot will be standing by in order to quickly change things around and make it so that we're not stuck in a broken state of the game for too long. So if things do seem really silly right off the bat, don't worry about it too much because things will get changed. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and start talking about things. The biggest are the changes to the item system, and in fact, most of the changes that are going live are all in support to the item system changes. Now, the biggest change here is that mythic items are now a thing. Essentially, these are going to replace anything you currently bought as a core item. They are going to grant you a baseline of stats plus a powerful active or passive effect that can influence your playstyle, in addition to extra stats for every completed legendary item you have. So, Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, Warmog's Armor, those are all examples of current legendary items, in case you are confused as to what that means. Generally, the extra stats that are granted are going to be in line with the theme of the item in general. So, Immortal Shield Bow is an 80 carry item that is intended to grant them essentially burst survivability. So saying you're going to grant a shield and a bunch of extra lifesteal when someone tries to assassinate you when your health gets low enough. So that is going to be an item that 80 carries will have access to, and that shield bow is going to grant you additional health and attack damage for every other legendary item you complete, which is sort of in line with the theme of surviving burst. So generally, that's kind of what I'm talking about. So it sort of supports the play style altogether by going for this item which is just, I don't want to die, I want to try and survive when someone like a Rengar or a Talon jumps on my face. Most champions are going to be building their mythic item first and then continue down whatever build path they desire. So generally speaking, this is going to replace your first item. You are going to get your mythic first because it is so impactful and it grants you so many extra stats. Obviously, you do not have to. The game does not make you build your mythic item first, but I do feel like most champions are still going to want to do so. Every class, in addition, is going to have their own mythic items, but these are not class gated. So Ezreal, for example, could build the Divine Sunder, which is an AD bruiser mythic item, if he so chooses, if he decides that the stats it grants him are better. So Riot are not going to try and gate these super hard to say only 80 carries can build 80 carry mythics, but they do want to be on the lookout in case mythics start getting abused by champions or classes that they're not really supposed to be used for. If you're confused by what I mean about classes, essentially tanks, 80 carries, AD bruisers, AP bruisers, AD assassins, AP assassins, supports, and mages are the individual categories that will all be receiving mythic items, and every class has either 3 or 4 different mythic options depending on what they want to be going for. So you will have more than a few options. There will be more than a few items. Some of them are going to be repurposed old items. So a lot of times, especially if the name looks familiar, it probably is an older item. You probably know generally how it works or how it worked before. So the Frostfire Gauntlet is just Iceborne Gauntlet. That works exactly as you would expect. Sunborn Aegis is just Sunfire Cape. That's going to work exactly as you would expect. That sort of thing. If it sounds similar, it's because it probably is similar. Now, your choice of mythic is going to come down to what you think you need for the situation or the game at hand, instead of being an automatic choice. So, unlike in an older style of game, you are not going to be plowing along with a build irregardless of what the matchup is. So, for example, in the old system, Tristana will pretty much always build Infinity Edge first and then a Zeal item in every single game. That does not change for Tristana. She doesn't have to think about that. That is just her build. That's not the case anymore. Now she's going to have to decide what mythic she actually wants to go. I've actually seen some Tristanas go for one of the assassin mythic items because they want to maximize their upfront burst, but Tristana could also go for a more conventional option like Kraken Slayer for just maximum DPS. But maybe if you're up against a team that has a lot of skill shot crowd control that you're worried about getting in your face and blowing you up without having to get in close, you do have the option of going something like Gale Force, which gives you a free targeted dash in order to try and get around that damage. So there are going to be options depending on what you want. This does mean you'll have to think a little bit harder about what item you want to build first, but since a lot of the mythic item components build into the same mythic, so an 80 carry mythic item, I believe they all have one of the same components or very similar components, so you should be able to flex your build around depending on what you end up needing. So if you start building towards that Kraken Slayer because you want maximum DPS, and then you realize the enemy Rengar is 4-0, you may want to switch that into an Immortal Shield Bow in order to survive that burst when he does jump on you. Other than mythic items, Riot have also added additional items in order to flesh out AP Bruiser and Assassin itemization, so they won't just be building items that other classes build all the time. They will have their own items that they can feel pretty good about building. I've seen the AP Bruiser itemization. I do feel like they're going to feel pretty good about a lot of the options they've got going for them. And AP Assassins will have their own category of mythic items as well, but they'll generally still be using regular mage itemization if they decide that's what they want to go for. Right, have also added additional items for AD fighters. They have 4 mythic items, so they have a good flexibility in what they decide they want to build, in addition to a few other items that will give them some additional support. So if they decide they want an item like QSS, there is a AD Bruiser specific item that grants a similar effect. So that is going to be a very nice change for them, and a bit of a nerf to a champion like Mordekaiser, for example. So that is a little disappointing if you do play that character. They've also granted AD carries more defensive options that slot better into their builds. So beforehand, a lot of the defensive items AD carries could build felt pretty bad because you'd have to kind of sidestep building more crit, and because crit just synergizes so well with itself, stopping your build to build a Guardian Angel felt pretty bad because it didn't give you any crit. It didn't synergize with that Infinity Edge or Essence Reaver you built first. Now, AD carries will have a better way of slotting those items into their builds because, surprise, most of their defensive items now grant you critical strike. So they will feel a little bit better about putting that Infinity or that Guardian Angel as their second item because, hey, it's still giving them crit. They don't feel too bad about that. On-hit builds have a bit of a weird change because you won't be able to build Ginsus as a starting item, and there isn't really an item like Hextech Gunblade as a mythic item. However, they essentially are going to be itemizing probably an attack speed item that grants you critical strike, and then the new Ginsu's Rage Blade is going to convert critical strike damage and critical strike chance into on-hit damage. That means that a champion like Kayle will go Kraken Slayer, have access to crit and attack damage and attack speed, and then build the Ginsu's, which essentially says you can't crit anymore, but now you have that on-hit damage like you're used to. It's a really weird 2-item spike, but it will give a similar effect to what you might be used to having on champions like that. It is going to be weird for champions like Akali or Katarina, but they will have other options and support from Riot. Riot are definitely committed to making them feel good about their item builds as well, so don't worry too much about that. Some items have been added to support niche builds, so an item like Horizon Focus, which gives you more damage if you hit enemy champions outside of a certain range. So artillery mages, for example, really like that, or Karthus, because, hey, if you're outside of range, if you're anywhere on the map, I will get the bonus damage from Horizon Focus, for example. Some items have reworked effects, so Gargoyle Stoneplate, for example, now grants a shield instead of the damage reduction. Death's Dance is a snowball-y team fighting item. Steric's Gauge is a team fight anti-burst item, etc., etc. There are a lot of these items that have been changed. Fundamentally, they have similar effects, but they have been changed mechanically, so you will want to make sure you take a look at those items, and like I said before, I will have a video out when the patch notes go live talking about how these items have fundamentally changed. Some items have simply changed names, so like I said before, with the mythic items, you know what these items do. Generally, they are going to do the same thing, and for example, Plated Steel Caps is replacing Ninja Tabby, so if you were looking for Ninja Tabby to try and survive an attack damage carry you won't have to worry about that anymore. That's no longer going to be your option. And Tear the Goddess is a starting item now. So if you decide you want to go for a Tear the Goddess build, if you are a champion like Ezreal or Ryze, you can opt into a Tear the Goddess straight from level 1 in order to get that stacking right off the bat, though you will be losing out on the sweet stats that a Doran's item grants, so it's not just straight an upgrade. Moving on from the mythic item changes here, Riot have replaced cooldown reduction as a stat with ability haste. I've talked about this a little bit before, but ability haste is similar to CDR. It still reduces the cooldowns of your abilities, but it is a linear multiplier, not a multiplicative multiplier. So 20 ability haste is not the same as 20% CDR. In fact, your abilities are significantly lower cooldown with 20% CDR than they are at 20 ability haste. However, by comparison, ability haste can stack infinitely. So if you really decide you want to commit to a build with high amounts of ability haste, you can have a lot of casts that maybe aren't as impactful as if you were building AP or another stat, but that will still allow you to very quickly provide your utility to the team and get off a lot of casts of your abilities and essentially be able to use your ultimate off cooldown, that sort of a thing. So do be looking forward to that change moving forward, and a lot of runes and champion abilities that previously mentioned cooldown reduction, they will be now mentioning ability haste, so you can be looking forward to that. Moving on to jungle changes. The jungle items are being changed. Junglers will now buy one of two items, the Hail Blade or the Ember Knife, which are going to grant you either chilling or challenging smite respectively. So you know what these items do. You already know what those smites do. Essentially, the item is just going to be something you build right off the bat as opposed to having to buy it on your first back. The biggest thing here is that after smiting 5 times, the item disappears and grants you its effects permanently. So there's no more having to build a warrior enchant or runic echoes enchant or what have you first in order to get value out of that item slot. Now just build your mythic items straight from level 1. It doesn't matter because once you smote 5 times, that item slot will essentially be freed up, but you'll also keep the stats and things from the jungle item itself. So not that it grants stats, but the effects of it, including the jungle monster healing and the smiting effect, you will be able to keep all of that. So that is going to be a nice change for junglers. And like I said before, there are small tweaks to other systems, especially in terms of champion abilities to accommodate for the changes that are being made. That is a very broad picture overview of the changes, guys. If you're looking for more refined changes, I will have another video about the changes that are coming out when the patch notes go live. Of course, you'll be able to read the patch notes yourself when those do come out. And of course, you can always go to a site that does PvE coverage like Surrender at 20 in order to see what the changes are yourself. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what changes you're most excited for down in the comments. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. I'm a big excited for the 80 bruiser changes, but you'll have to let me know what you want to see down in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.